Yes. All right. No, unless you are a tech wizard. Unless I understand tech. You get to be right in the stream. Oh, there you go. Okay. All right. I'll just do a lot of for everyone on the live stream, we're still getting settled, so give us about 5 more minutes. All right. There we go. Reset up. I moved the podium just a little bit so you can see it better. Yeah, exactly. Okay, and then I switch over. That's all I need. Yeah, you're good. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Let's see how this all works, right? Everyone's here. You're like testing it out. I know. Exactly. One of those. That's something else. They don't have it themselves, but I could send it to them. So let me just adjust this a little. Oh, it's on a delay. There we go. Perfect. Actually, do you want to test the clicker really quick just to make sure it's not going to like do something weird to the Great. Good afternoon. I think we're ready to get started now. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody today. I'm Kristen Fox. I'm one of the co-founders of FinFoundHer, and here is my partner, Holly. We have another partner in Seattle. She's hiding behind the scenes. Yes. Joining us virtually today. We're really thrilled today to have Laura Yoder from FinFoundHer Solutions with us to talk about valuation. In my experience, both as an investor and as an entrepreneur, valuation is one of those places where there's always trouble. And there's always trouble because it's a really difficult thing to do. And investors and entrepreneurs don't always agree on what that valuation should be. So we've asked Laura here today to talk about valuing one of the top things in your business and something that you may not have thought about, which is your intangible assets. And now I'm going to shut up, let Laura talk, and let you enjoy your lunch. Thank you, Kristen. And thank you, FinFoundHer involved for this is some great space that we have here involved for. And thank you for coming out snow. Down sideways out there. So today we're going to talk about intangible assets. And so before we get into intangible assets, I'd like to kind of see maybe a show of hands of people that know what intangible assets are and are really clear on what they are for your business. Ish. Okay, ish. Yes. Okay, great. So this is a little educational for everybody. So we talk about intangible assets. They're basically everything except for tangible assets, right? The tangible assets of an organization are really physical nature. It's going to be inventory, property, plants. This is an area where when you're getting a typical valuation, a financial valuation, there's a lot of time spent on tangibles. So it could be your cash flow, it could be, what you have in your accounts. The intangible assets are pretty much everything else that drive growth of the business. So when we talk about tangible assets, these are a result of human intellect and work. So that can be intellectual property, which patents, trademarks, copyrights. These are things that do get valued typically in a financial valuation as well. A number is put on intellectual property. But these other areas within intangible assets, not so much. They're really difficult to measure. So that could be human capital, which is your culture, your talent, your people, the reputation of the organization, your brand recognition, innovation, customer relationships, and loyalty. So these are really, really important things that drive business growth. So we're going to talk about that today. So this is an excellent chart from Oshitomo. Oshitomo is a merchant bank based here in Chicago, and they work on a lot of intellectual capital and tangible asset valuation. And they work with a lot of different types of firms. And this chart shows the difference in the value of S&P 500 companies, over the past years, and how it's flip-flopped as far as where the value is in the organization. So back in 1975, most of the value came from tangible assets, right? And now we're in 2015, which is the latest time they updated this. Now we're looking at intangible assets making 84% of all of the value of the S&P 500 companies. So there's something really important going on here, right? I mean, if this is where the value is in the company, then this is where we should be spending our time, right? And also, to see this change, it makes perfect sense as we move into more of a service economy, right? We went from industrial to service, so it makes sense that now that's where the value is that we're finding in these public Fortune 500 companies. Okay, so how many people have a balance sheet for their organizations? Okay, so you're familiar with balance sheets. So on a balance sheet, you have your assets and your liabilities, but part of your assets is this area called intangible assets. Now, intangible assets on the balance sheet are becoming larger and larger. There's more dollars being attributed to intangible assets on the balance sheet, but they're still incredibly hard to measure. And the intangible assets that go on the balance sheet really are not representative of the entire intangible assets of an organization. And I'll tell you why. So it used to be that the only intangible asset that was on a balance sheet was goodwill. And goodwill, you know what goodwill means? Anybody know what goodwill means? So goodwill basically is the difference between book value and market value of a company. Okay. Well, how do you get to that? Book value is okay, you've got a valuation done on your finances and your tangibles, not so much on your intangibles, and then you put it out for sale. So the difference between what that assessment is financially for your organization and how we can sell it for, that's goodwill, right? So goodwill is usually on the balance sheet, and then again, if you talk to accountants, they're like, it's like putting your finger up in the air. Like, we make a good guess on what we think it's going to be. So it's not really, as quantifiable as we might like it to be. Then the other area on the balance sheet where it's growing is in the intellectual property. So intellectual property, like I stated before, like your copyrights, your trademarks, they can be valued, and again, it's really hard to value them, but they can be valued, and they go on your balance sheet. However, there's a whole lot more of intangible assets that are not being captured on your balance sheet. So the way that we look at it is we look at intangible capitals, if you will, and there's 4 key capitals. And this is where we look at organizations and to be really looking at each one of these areas in the organization, doing an assessment and remediating wherever necessary, but also understanding the interdependencies amongst all of these capitals.
So when we look at strategic capital, what we would do if we're going to go into an organization and assess it is we would talk to the management team and try to figure out what is their mission, what is their strategy, is that aligned with what's actually happening within the organization, and is that aligned with what the marketplace is needing. The other area is human capital, which I think is the most important of any business, is the people. And the company's culture drives a lot. It drives the employee engagement, and having diversity obviously is an important attribute of human capital as well. And intellectual capital, which you talked about, but also intellectual capital isn't just intellectual property. It's also thought leadership. How are you being viewed out in the marketplace? Are you an expert in what you're doing? And also innovation and what kind of competitive advantage the organization has. The last area is social and relationship capital, which really is like market capital. So what is your market strategy? How are you going to market? Do you have strong customer relationships and loyalty with those customers? And what's your sales strategy? And a lot of times we find that in this area, you might have really strong customer relationships, but you're not really diverse in your customers. So, if something happens within a sector or market moves in the opposite direction you want, you could lose a lot of your clients. So being diversified is really important when we do an assessment. So this is kind of an example of how the intangible capitals are really interdependent on each other. Ideally, you want to have a company that with a strong strategy and a vision, and it creates a great culture, which in turn creates excellent employee engagement, and then you have employee retention, satisfaction, productivity goes up, your customer satisfaction is up, and your customer loyalty is where it needs to be, and then ultimately you're looking at bottom line profits. That's ideal, that's what you want to see. But typically in organizations, that's not what's happening. There's something happening within one of these capitals. And just as an example, we worked with an organization that had slowed sales. And so their initial reaction was, let's go get a sales coach, try to figure what's going on. Obviously the sales team isn't doing a good job. Well, they tried that and it didn't work. Well, it didn't work because it wasn't their sales team. They actually had a stellar sales team. The sales team didn't really have something to sell that was applicable or desirable in the marketplace. And the reason for that is because the company didn't allow for culture of innovation. So they were not creating products that were really desirable in the marketplace. So the root problem, the slowed sales of the organization, was actually coming from their culture. So it's important to understand that how these all interact with one each other and what they can do for an organization. Have any of you seen anything like this where there was a problem in one area and you didn't realize it was actually coming from another area, right? It happens all the time. But being able to do an assessment of the company in all areas will point out kind of where these issues are starting from. Okay, so when we talk about tangible assets, it's good to look at public companies because they're easier to kind of identify and quantify, right? So when you think about what drives the public company performance, the intangible assets can really be seen in the stock price, right? So you can quantify if you make some changes within an organization that have to do with intangible assets and the stock price goes up and say, okay, we saw a correlation, right? So here's a couple of examples of companies that have done an amazing job with their culture, and it has increased their stock price because of it. The first is Southwest, and if you've never flown Southwest, I know some people love it, some people can't stand it, but if you've flown Southwest and you've seen the culture of the people that are very happy and engaging, and sometimes maybe too happy to early in the morning, but they have created this amazing culture where they've actually been able to bring down the amount of employees that they have versus their competitors. So they don't use as many employees per customers that are coming onto the planes. One of the things that they're really, really good at, and it's because of the culture, is turning around planes. So if you've ever been on Southwest, you know how quickly you can get out of the plane and how quickly you're getting back on. That has saved them a ton of money, and it has increased their stock price just from that alone. And that was driven by culture. Like, hey, let's make this something that we all working on together, and this is happening. With Apple, we've seen with Tim Cook, as opposed to Steve Jobs. His philosophy is a little bit different in that he encourages really kind of different ideas for products and services, even ones that he might think are like, that's ridiculous, it'll never work. But he challenges that and wants to see it from his employees. So he has a little more diversity going on within the organization, and that has driven the stock price as well. Okay, so still in public companies. If you look at a public company, there's this massive transition that is happening with reporting. And it's really more in Europe and globally, and here in the US, it's just starting to take off. And what it's called is integrated reporting. So we all know that a public company has to, file their annual report, their 10K on an annual basis. They're also including now sustainability reports. They're not required, but a lot of companies are including those. But these integrated reports are so different because they're not only including what's required, which is the data, the finances, but it's also including intangibles. So the annual reports are now a story. And so if investors are able to see what is going on in that organization, what's going on well, where are the areas that they're maybe not doing so well, where they need to concentrate some of their efforts. But it's a very transparent, complete story that investors are seeing through these integrated reports. And they're powerful. They're extremely powerful because people want to know what's going on in the organization. They don't want to just see, the earnings. The earnings are important, obviously, but they want to know what's driving it and what are maybe some of the things, the issues that may be happening within an organization that that could, potentially halt future growth. So this is a trend that's happening. These are some of the organizations that are probably recognizable to you that are using integrated reporting today. Okay, so then when we talk about a private company, it's a little bit more challenging because we don't have a stock price. We don't put out our numbers out to public. But in the spirit of the integrated reporting, private value to really tell the story of your company. For sure, you need a financial valuation, right? Which is going to be performed by an accountant. It'll be a snapshot of time of historical financial information. It may also include a market analysis of some companies that have been sold. And we'll talk about different transactions as well. And if you're a startup company and you don't have any revenue, you're not going to have a financial valuation. But you still want to have some sort of cash flow analysis or projection, or something that you're going to use on the financial side. But what we think is that on the intangible asset side, you really need to have an evaluation. And that needs to be part of your valuation story. And it should be something that goes into an investor packet. And I can get into that a little bit later. But so an intangible asset assessment is looking at those four capitals that I talked about earlier. And it's performed really by a consultant that can come in and really see all the different moving parts. And actually, a lot of private equity and investment banking firms are starting to use these and add them into their financial valuations because it tells the story. It's more compelling when you are looking for buyers or investors. So here's an example. This is a client that we worked with, and we came in and did the assessment on his intangible assets. He already had the financial part done. He put the financial valuation with the assessment of the intangibles and created an investor packet. So prior to having that assessment done, this is a FinFoundHer Chicago-based restaurant group. This is one of the top chefs in Chicago, and he's looking to expand. So he was going out to investors, not getting really any kind of headway with investors. Really, the only people that he was talking to were the ones that had already invested in him before. So it was, maybe a handful of investors. But then we performed the intangible asset evaluation on the company. And at first, we didn't understand why he wanted us to do it because it seemed like everything was going so well in the organization. But you're always going to uncover something, right? No organization is perfect. And his culture is really, really strong at this organization. It's off the charts, like nothing you've ever seen. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that most of the people that worked there for a very long time. They started at the bottom and worked up. So there's always been like this path. And there's a lot of sharing of ideas and issues that self-resolve that the chef doesn't get involved in. But what we did find is that for this particular restaurant group, they're in the North Shore, and they really only have North Shore clients. And the one restaurant is a tasting room with like 5 tables, and he comes out and brings every dish himself. It's like an amazing experience. And for foodies, they should know about this restaurant. It's an amazing restaurant. The other chefs in Chicago know about it, but nobody really else in downtown, mostly just North Shore. So that's a problem. That's a major problem. If he's trying to expand, he needs to be a destination restaurant, and he needs to have a strategy. So we work with him on his strategy, and his new strategy is he wants to kind of do the opposite of what Rick Bayless did for Mexican food. So if you're familiar with Rick Bayless, and you know that he has one of the top restaurants in Chicago that's Mexican, okay, like he took street food and turned it into top of the line, and he also has everything in between. Because he's in the airports, he's at Disney World, but he has different types of restaurants. And he's been able to take Mexican food that typically was considered cheap, and made it something much, much better. So this chef is he's a French chef, and he wants to do the opposite. So he wants to take his tasting table experience, keep that, but he wants to bring French food to the masses. So that's really his strategy, and he's going to do, and then also become a destination restaurant. So by having this idea, the story, he went back out to the investors, and now he's working with 40 plus investors. And he says they're lined up for it. But now he's in the driver's seat, right? He doesn't have to say, oh, gosh, I'm so desperate. I want to say, well, please, somebody invest in me. And now it's wow, I have all these people that are really interested in me, and I can take my time, and I can figure out who it is that I want to, partner with. Because it's a big deal when you start, partnering with investors, right? You can use a lot of control of your organization. So this is really just put them in the driver's seat. So this is a statistic that I'm sure a lot of you have seen, especially if you're a female founder. But only 2% of venture capital funds go to female founded businesses. It's unbelievable. It's unfathomable. Like how is this happening? How is it happening that we're seeing this in the marketplace when 38% of businesses are owned by women, but only 2% of VC money goes to them? There's something going on here, right? Well, in my opinion, it's a 80-20, and 20% is definitely bias. There is conscious bias, which is people just want to work with people like them. And then there's your unconscious bias, right? The unconscious bias is you're doing things and you don't really even realize you're doing them. So Harvard Business Review did a study on what's going on here, and with the female founders. And they found that the questions that were being asked by the VC investors to the women and men were very different. So what they call them are promoter questions and prevention questions. Promoter questions are all about growth, right? How do you plan to monetize your company? That's a promoter question. Preventive, like or risk question would be, how long is it taking to be break even? Which one do you think is asked of which? So the males were getting the questions that were about promoting the business, and the women were getting more of the risk averse preventing. Like, what are you going to do if something happens? And another example is the male founders were asked for, like, well, what are your milestones? What are your milestones and progression? What's going to happen with your business? Whereas the women were asked, well, how predictable is your cash flow? So these are very different questions being asked. So, and again, that can be very unconscious. It's not something that people may be doing, on purpose, but it's just something that it's an unconscious bias within themselves. The other 80%, in my opinion, is that women just are not prepared. And they're not as prepared as men. And it's hard to prepare, period, for getting funding. no matter what, no matter who you are, it's a challenging thing to do. But I feel as if women founders are just not as prepared as men. And there's a few reasons for this, right? Well, I think one is that a lot of times we don't have the same confidence that men do when we walk in asking for something. The other is men typically seem to think bigger than women. So as an example, you ask a woman what's a $1 million company and ask, where do you want to be in 5 years? I want to be 10 million. You ask a male, and typically you might say 100 million, right? They're just thinking bigger. They're thinking bigger, they're getting more, the dollar amount of funding is larger than what women are getting. The other issue is that a lot of times women aren't prepared to talk to investors. They don't know what different types of investment funding is available for them and don't know how to talk with investors. So if you haven't spent time to educate yourself on the different types of investing options and what that means, then you can't have a conversation. So that's another issue that's happening. And then, more importantly, what's the story? When you're coming to the table, what are you talking about? Is it compelling to the investor? Are they, is it talking about the future growth for the organization? That's what investors want. They're not really caring about what it is today, right? They want to know what's going to be in the future. So if you're not talking about your future performance, where you're going to be, then you're not telling the right story. So this is where we go back to these capitals, and I think it's really important that when you're trying to, advocate for your firm and figure out what you're doing really well, that there is that compelling story, that there is an assessment of all of your company's intangible assets, and it's okay if some of them aren't doing well, and to outline that, because that's maybe where you need the funding, is to make something better, right? But also just communicating what that company's future growth story is. That is your intangible asset story. Your numbers aren't going to say that. You can project all you want what you think the numbers are going to be, but if you don't have the story around how you're going to get there, then it's not much of a story. So again, there's a lot on the slide because I feel kind of passionate about female founders and being able to, if they're looking for funding, to get the funding that they need and they want, and they deserve. And again, there's a lot of things working against anybody seeking funding, but especially for women, we have a little bit more that we're up against. And I think that being prepared to work against those unconscious bias that you may see, that is probably well-intended, but it comes out in a way that it's different for men and women. Being able to recognize when that's happening and just redirect the question. If they ask you something about risk, yes, this answer it and then turn it over to growth, right? And that's part of what we need to be doing, is being able to drive really that conversation. And then also, again, be prepared to tell your compelling story. Have your financials, but also talk about what's a great about your company and where's that future. So when you're looking for funding, you aren't really in the driver's seat. There's so many things that are available to you. We have the Women's Business Development Council here today, and that's a great resource that I don't know if people are even aware of, as far as education and microfunding, and there's all different types of investors that are out there that want to invest, angel investors, and private equity, investment banking, alternative lending. There's so much out there. It's just a matter of talking to the right person, right? So I think that it's important to do all these things, and if you're not getting in front of the right people, then you don't know who you're talking to, then what is your story? You have to know your audience. So being able to talk the talk, have confidence, think big, know how the different types of investments that are available to you, what they mean, and what they mean for you. And then walking the walk is really, our kind of skin in the knee. What's going on with your company? If you're not willing to put in, something financially into your company, is that something that people are going to grab onto? If you don't believe in it, how does anybody else believe in it? And then again, just getting in front of the right investors, I think is really important. So how do you value your company? As Kristen said when she introduced me, it's extremely difficult to value your company, regardless if you're talking about tangible assets or intangible assets. And you know, regardless of where you are in your business life cycle, you know, whether you're a startup, you don't have any ROI yet or any successes that you can prove, or you're a company that's more established, you're looking to sell the company, you're looking for funding, or if you're just trying to increase the overall performance of your company, really being able to have a financial valuation and adding in the intangibles together is the most compelling story that you can have. And so that's where I feel like you get to the value of your company is through your story and having that complete picture of the organization. So, any questions? Yes.
One of the things you had said that I think was really interesting was the social intangible capital, and that is the customer relationships, loyalty, and market strategy. But typically, when someone's evaluating a company in the financial model and the projections, we can see how many customers we anticipate we're going to get. We can anticipate sales. We can anticipate churn rate in some instances. So what's the difference between those things that would happen as a matter of course in a financial model and how you're calling it as a social intangible capital here?
Yeah.
You can explain
No, that's a
that.
great question, because from the financial standpoint, you're projecting out, right, based on your experiences, what you think it's going to be, as far as the customer loyalty, retention, and all that. When you do an evaluation of it, you're looking more at your client's strategy. Is that strategy the right strategy for what you're doing? Again, like even just going back to the example of diversification. So if you have only one type of client base, that could be a red flag, right? You know, that may not be sustainable. So when you do the evaluation, it's really more about strategy and making sure that what you have in place is what you should be having for if you want future growth and to avoid risk. So that's really the difference, is being able to look at it from that standpoint.
Thank
When you're looking at the actual dollars and cents, how much, especially in the context of an investor, how much of a discount? I mean, if I'm the investor and I don't think that your company's ever going to go anywhere, that's the end of the conversation.
Right.
I mean, I'm only going to invest if I think there's going to be future growth.
Right.
So how do you, or how do the people in this room identify what's the reasonable number? You know, should I invest in a valuation of $1 million or $10 million? I mean, you're going to get to $50 million. Whatever.
So I'll go back to the example of Chef. So Chef he's a very strategic, visionary person, and which is always good to work with somebody like that. But you know, he was initially thinking, I think I'm just gonna change my own restaurant, change it over. I don't want to spend a lot of money, whatever. So that would have been a very small amount of money that would be asking for investors, because that was the strategy. But then he started doing the evaluation of what's going on in the marketplace, and maybe he should be doing some more things to create more buzz for himself, and then realized, okay, well now I need a market strategy. I need to hire an outside firm to help me with that. I need a PR firm. I gotta get into the magazines, you know, I gotta get out of the community. So that changes the dollar amount, right? From, well, I'm gonna turn over, maybe I need to open a design company to start up my restaurant, to now you have a whole new strategy. That's gonna be a lot more dollars that you're gonna want for that. So that's an example.
I guess what I'm trying to understand though is, let me just think if I can. Okay,
Into
so
a dollar amount.
if I give you $1 a day for your business, I want $3 in the future. How do you start to do that math based on this management?
It's really difficult. Putting an actual dollar amount number on intangibles is extremely difficult. Really the only way that you can get to what is the true value of intangible assets of an organization is to sell it. I mean, it's really the only way to know. But there's so much research and empirical evidence about why it's so important. And you can see examples. I mean, you look at two very similar companies that go out on the marketplace at the same time. One has an amazing culture, innovation, thought leadership, which one do you think is gonna be valued higher? Right, they're the same kind of company, but if you have the intangibles working for you, then the future growth of the organization is gonna look a lot more attractive. So that company's gonna be, placed at a higher value. But again, it's what the marketplace will bear, right? And it's what investors will bear. So it's really hard to come in and say, okay, based on doing all this, we're asking for X amount of money. It's difficult.
It's a little bit of a gas and negotiation once you're in front of investors.
Yeah.
It's really like, I'm not Google, that everybody wants, but like everybody that's working with me loves being here and help like.
But if you yes, absolutely. Tell the whole story though.
Yeah.
Tell the whole story about your organization. Why should I care? Why should I care? And of course I need to know, the data points as well, but it might be the story. You have great culture. Why? Why do you have great culture? What does that mean? What does it really do? You have great culture, so now you're going to be innovating new products. You gotta take it further. You gotta go and talk about everything. And then if you're looking for funding and maybe it's because you want to expand or whatever it may be, or maybe there's a deficiency somewhere in your organization, that's okay. Say, hey, I'm looking for money because I know this isn't working. And if I can get this working, then I know that's gonna go, it's gonna grow.
Do you think this is something that is done for a smaller company or a larger company with attention and access? Question, the reason why I'm asking is that specifically for startups or when investors are looking at startups, they know that at the end of the day, going back to the question, it's really all about you have a established kind of company and then intangible asset rather than consideration, right?
Yeah.
So how much of a difference do you think it makes for a startup versus a startup?
I think it's more important at sort of the stage actually, because you don't have anything to show. You don't have anything to say, oh, I've been successful, I have ROI, right? So it's more important at the startup phase that you are talking about, your intangible assets. And maybe your intangible assets are very small, but you have to get where you want them to be as you grow, right? So that's where the story comes in. It comes in every phase, but the start phase is to go and get projections on something that's improvement. You better have something a lot stronger to go in and talk to investors with.
Yes, you showed the chart where the trends for tangible versus intangible had been reflected in the marketplace. When it comes to the overall valuation of the company, do you see from the investor standpoint that there's a hierarchy of the intangibles that really speak to them or stand out, whether it's innovation, culture, human capital, brand, or is it like whatever, you can speak best to, obviously you start there. But on the receiving end, is there like a trend?
I would say yes, there is a trend, and that mostly it's in the human capital, because it's so important. The people are so important to the company. The culture is so important to driving everything else. That is something that is a must be evaluated. I mean, no investor is going to go into a deal without knowing what the culture is, without knowing what the management team is all about. What are they thinking? How do they think? How do they bring themselves out in the marketplace? They're just not. That for sure will absolutely be looked at, no matter what. But other areas like your strategy, the strategic vision, it could be off. It could be completely off of what is going on in the marketplace and what people are looking for. So that would be important. And they look at that. I mean, typically like a private equity firm will come in and they'll do interview, maybe might spend 2 days with the management. Figure out what's going on, right? Figure out, is there somebody toxic on this management team? That's really important to know whether things are running smoothly or not. So yes, human capital for sure. The other areas are equally important as well.
Do you have any, as non-proprietary examples of like how do people communicate all these intangibles? So for instance, I have an extremely strong strategic vision and most of it's in my mind, right? It's not, I don't know, like, what's the best way to communicate that to investors or angels or whatever? Do you have examples of that or really time?
So This idea is a little unique, I must say, that there aren't a lot of people out there looking at private companies like this, okay? I try to bring in the integrated reporting on public companies because that's where it's going with public companies. So you say you have a strategy in your head, well, if you had your strategy laid out very clearly, plus all the other areas of the organization, whether to build or not, maybe you're like, I don't have people yet, but this is what I want to, you lay it all out as that complete story. Not just, oh, I have this idea and I think it's going to work, right? Like, why? Why is it going to work? What are all the different things that you have to place that are going to make it, grow?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's just like, actually, like, do they want to see charts? Do they want to see like a chapter of a book of like how exactly is the best way to present it?
Okay, so I think, no, I know, I think there is exactly
I've
the best
done
way.
like sheets and I've done, I haven't pitched anybody, but I thought quite a bit about this, like how do you like essentially solidify that story in a very easy way to communicate, and what are there standards, I guess, that they're expecting from, especially the women in the room, that we're not prepared with, but we can prepare ahead of time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So,
Like, the flow charts is that I'm also a project manager as well for other small to medium-sized companies. So I put in my Gantt chart for strategy, but it's not like a 10-year strategy. But what's the best way, how do I do that?
so there is a difference between a pitch and an evaluation of your tangible assets, or an evaluation of your entire firm, right? They are different. Pitch is really quick. You're hoping it's going to be, exciting, that someone's going to want to talk to you. Doing an evaluation of all these different areas is a comprehensive evaluation. So how does it look? That's up to you. How does it look? But what does it say? And what is the content? So my recommendation to you would be to start at the top, do an assessment of your strategic capital, outline exactly what it is, and then continue down and do each one of these areas. Whether you have it or not, state it, or what you're thinking that you want it to be. Then you have that whole picture, and you can talk about what you're doing really well and what those areas for improvement. And that's where usually the funding is from here. So,
Well, between social relationship and human capital, right? I know that both of them are culture. What's the main difference?
human capital is really culture. That is the culture of the people, it's organizational structure. That is the human capital. Do you have the right people in the right seats? Do you have the right management team in place? Is the company set up appropriately? Maybe it doesn't need to be an LLC, maybe it doesn't need a partnership. That's a given. The social relationship capital is really how are you marketing your firm? What's your sales strategy? Who are the clients that you are marketing to? The right clients. Yeah, that's the market, go-to-market strategy. And everything that you're pushing out. It's really a market capital, opposed to social relationship. But that's where your customer loyalty comes in, right? And then again, the intellectual capital is more than just IP, intellectual property. It's also thought leadership and innovation. If you're not doing that, if you're not out there as an expert, whatever it is that you're trying to be, that makes it more difficult. And just having that presence in the marketplace that you are an expert in the things that you're doing, I think is really important and innovative. So when we do an evaluation, we have a whole checklist. We look at every single area, and it's very comprehensive. And regardless of what it ends up looking like that we present. So we presented a complete evaluation of financial intangibles to a PE firm. This thing was like 50 pages. But there's also an executive summary, so we can get to the point really quick. But that's comprehensive. That's really talking about what's going on in the organization. That's like an annual report, right? That's not just a pitch where you have a few things that you're saying. This is a complete story about what's going on in the organization. Any other questions? Yes.
I guess this is more of an observation or a comment. Your first bullet up there is tell a compelling story. That is literally true in your pitch. But then also, how does your strategy kind of weave together in a way that seems to make sense? Not only to yourself, but then there's that eureka aha moment that comes from a potential customer, potential investor, such that it really doesn't take all that much effort for them to advocate for you, introduce you to other people, or decide that they want to write you a check. And so this idea of telling a story is it's got to be something that is deep seated. It's something that's very easy for you to tell. It doesn't require a lot of effort. So thank you so much for really making it clear about how some of that hard, tangible stuff must get weaved in with some of this intangible stuff that you've been talking about. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, but this is what's going to drive all the tangibles, right?
Absolutely.
This is what drives it. And it's hard to put a number on it. It is. I mean, it's almost impossible.
Right.
And be correct about it, right? But it's important, it's significant, it's driving value, and it needs to be talked about. And if it's not,
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, especially in the social relationship capital piece that I asked about before, you kind of know what those numbers are if you've done a lot of market research, if you've tested it. Yeah, I mean, it's how strong is that strategy, and that at its core may be an intangible, but when you socialize the idea, you kind of have a runway. So to your point, one absolutely does drive the other, and I appreciate you stressing this.
yeah, and that the interdependencies cannot be, spoken about enough, because let's say your business, your social relation capital is great, it's strong, fantastic. You talk about how great that is. But what about the other areas? And they all have to be evaluated, objectively to see what's really going on in the organization. And to tell that story. And tell the complete story. You can't say, oh, we have a really great client base. Well, what are you doing? Human capital, what are you doing, innovating or leadership and stuff.
And then as a yes and, it really tells you if what you have is a really good product or if you have a business.
That's right. This is your business story. It's not a product story. Absolutely.
Well, and I would say on the flip side, it can help you decide if the investor is right for you. Because if your intangibles that are important to you are important to them, I think that says a lot about the culture fit. Because you don't want to just take money because it's out there, right? So it's a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, really, you should be in the driver's seat. If you're seeking funding or if you want to sell your business, I mean, you should be doing it with, the right partner. And being able to, if you have, the more you have, it, like you can be talking about strategic wise and, where you see the value in your company, the better off you're going to be. And, just the example of the chef, nobody wanted to talk to me. Actually, I was in a meeting with an investment banking firm and I was telling him the story and he's like, oh, is that Chef so-and-so? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, we passed on it. That was before he heard the story. And I was like, wait, maybe we should have that. So, if you're not telling the story or the right story, then, you're gonna get what you get.
This also is a really great way to align interests between you and the investor. Several people in this room have heard me say many times, not all money is the right money, and sometimes you just need to walk away. Understanding these things and how they relate to you and to a potential investor can send up a lot of red flags. And if you see that things aren't going to work, you need to walk away, and you need to walk away fast. There's other money out there. There's plenty of it out there, contrary to what it feels like. But if it's not the right money, you may have a monster living with you forever.
Or not the right co-founder.
There's that too.
But that is so true. It's so true, Kristen has said, because there is money out there and people want to invest, they want to buy these businesses, but it's got to be a good version, right? It's got to be good for you. That's what this is all about, is making it right for you. So when you're going out and you're seeking that money, that you're doing it in the right way. And you're in a powerful position as opposed to feeling, again, you don't want to feel desperate. I'm like, oh, I need money, you know, I'll take it from anywhere. No, that is not a good long-term decision. So by doing something like this, you're just gonna be in a better position when you're getting in front of it. Any other questions?
Doesn't look like anyone online has any right now, so okay, we're.
All right, we're good, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Laura. This is wonderful, and it was a great way to kick off 2019. We do have a couple of other things in the works right now that we're planning. We have a couple of events coming up that will be here. One will be on financial modeling, and the other will be on how to recession-proof business. And then please save the date for May 17th and 18th, which is the next FinFoundHer Summit. Hope we all see you then. Thank you.
Alright. Yeah, it works out. Yes. Stop the live stream. Yeah.
How many people do you have?